Flames consumed the village as chaos reigned. Screams filled the air, buildings collapsed in embers, and Kuma raced through the inferno, pulling out anyone he could find who hadn't escaped in time. The villagers cursed the king with every breath, vowing never to forgive him for this horror. Amid the panic, Kuma spotted a small girl sobbing for her mother, who hadn't made it out. Without hesitation, he plunged back into the flames to rescue her. Elsewhere, the one responsible, King Bikori, stood with a smug expression, claiming he was cleansing the city like some twisted savior. But then one of his guards arrived in a panic. Protesters had gathered at the castle gates, enraged and shouting that he and his men were murderers. They demanded the fire be put out. Bikori, without a shred of empathy, ordered his guards to shoot 4 or 5 people on the spot. "Make an example of them," he said coldly. "Anyone who challenges me gets the same." But before the soldiers could follow through, a furious Kuma arrived like a tempest. In seconds, he decimated the guards, explosions rippling through the scene as if the very earth was on his side. Back at the church, the injured were being treated. Bonnie, restless and worried, waited anxiously for her father. Though she was told to stay inside and avoid the moonlight, she could only think about Kuma. "Will Dad be okay?" she asked, her concern not for herself, but for him, and for the people still at the castle. Meanwhile, at the castle itself, Kuma had already laid waste to the royal guards. Alone with the now cowering king, Kuma listened to Bikori try to squirm his way out. The king offered the hand over the very idea he burned, calling it cleaned up trash, but that only made things worse. Kuma's mind flashed back to when he carried a woman's charred body, her daughter watching on in horror. That memory alone was enough to make him snap. Bikori, desperate to show some strength, emptied his gun into Kuma, firing 12 rounds directly into his chest. The result? Nothing. Kuma didn't flinch. His body, a wall of steel and fury, absorbed every bullet. With one crushing grip, he shattered the weapon. Bikori screamed, warning that attacking him would bring consequences, but Kuma was long past threats. With all the rage and sorrow he had bottled up, he summoned his power to launch a blast that would obliterate the king and his palace. That decisive moment would go down in history as the lone revolution of the Sorbet Kingdom. Far away in Mary Gioise, the 5 elders began investigating. Who took down the king of Sorbet, they asked, trying to understand what just transpired. But back in the kingdom, the answer was on everyone's lips: Kuma. The people chanted his name, hailing him as their new king. He continued living humbly in the church, now a symbol of strength and legend. Then, something unexpected happened. In the churchyard, a girl was training, and the villagers froze. She looked exactly like Jenny. Confused by their reactions, the girl asked why they were staring. She explained she planned to travel with her dad when she turned 10. But then, catching her own reflection, she screamed and suddenly transformed back into a child. Everyone was stunned. What kind of transformation was that? Someone muttered. Even Bonnie had no idea. Kuma nearly fainted. Someone suggested it might be the age fruit, but when they asked her to do it again, she couldn't. Then came more confusion. An old woman had collapsed nearby, and 2 bumbling villagers mistook her for Bonnie. She was actually talking to a man named Bulldog, the former king of Sorbet. He was now helping Kuma govern the country. That old lady? Bonnie's grandmother, still alive and surprisingly resilient. Yet peace was short-lived. News spread like wildfire. The newspapers were filled with false reports, claiming Kuma had torched a village and stolen the throne by force. Though they pinned it on Bikori, the government was backing him, implying he'd return to reclaim power. Bulldog brought worse news. Navy warships were heading for Sorbet. The elderly, terrified, said they couldn't live through that nightmare again. Kuma remained calm. If Bikori returned, he said, he'd take down his forces and whatever else they brought. But if that happened, he would officially become a criminal and could no longer stay in the country. He turned to Bulldog and asked him to take the throne in his place, and he made one more vow: to protect Bonnie. The church would be in danger once war came. He told her to behave while he was gone, but he made a mistake. He said all this to the wrong person, the real old lady, not Bonnie in disguise. She pulled him into a hug, tears in her eyes. "Don't go," she whispered, but Kuma had no choice. Responsibility called. Once again, he set off, alone, this time to protect not just a village, but an entire kingdom. When the Navy ships arrived, Kuma stood waiting. "You've got guts coming back here," he said as he faced them. 3 massive warships. Bakori, safely aboard, was screaming orders. "That's the criminal tyrant who stole my throne! Take him down!" But Kuma didn't flinch. With the fury of a storm and power coursing through his fists like nuclear energy, he launched himself like a missile. With a single devastating move, he sank all 3 warships in an instant, like some pirate-themed bowling strike. And after delivering justice once more, Kuma vanished into the sea. From that moment on, he was no longer just a revolutionary, he became a wanted man. Bonnie was missing her father like crazy. The old lady tried to comfort her, reminding her that Kuma was a hero, but the feisty little rebel wasn't having it. She declared that once she turned 10 and got better, she'd become a pirate too. After all, with her ability to age herself up, why not? Meanwhile, Kuma was sailing across the world, desperate to find a cure. He asked everyone he could if they'd ever heard of a disease where sunlight was lethal, but no one knew anything about it. Some fools even tried to capture him for his bounty, but they ended up face down in the dirt, wondering where they went wrong. Kuma pressed on, haunted by the fact that Bonnie only had 5 years left, at best. Maybe she wouldn't even make it to 10. Then, out at sea, fate threw him a curveball. He ran into the Revolutionary Army. They sat down for drinks, Bello Betty chilling casually on his shoulder. Dragon joked about how Kuma went from revolutionary to tyrant king to pirate in no time, and no one in the group was buying the world government's version of the story anyway. Betty asked what he thought about her taking over Jenny's old role as Eastern Force captain. She wanted to honor Jenny's legacy. Kuma gave her his blessing, and she lit up like a kid on Christmas. Dragon mentioned that Sabo, Koala, and the rest of the crew missed him. Kuma would have loved to rejoin them, but he couldn't, not while Bonnie needed him. Then Dragon revealed a lead. He'd heard of a scientist, Dr. Vegapunk, who might know something. After a recent incident, Vegapunk was relocating to a new lab. Normally unreachable, but now, security was light. Dragon said it was a shot. That flicker of hope was all Kuma needed. He thanked Dragon. He'd been on the verge of giving up, but now, he was fired up again. If Bonnie could be saved, he promised to return to the fight. Back in the Sorbet Kingdom, he found Bonnie mid-sparring session, roughing up a guard. She said she trained every day and was ready for an adventure. Kuma told her the time had come. He smuggled her in a barrel and set sail for Vegapunk's new lab. When Vegapunk laid eyes on Kuma, he almost dropped dead. He'd never seen anyone like him. With that giant dome of a head, he might have been taller than Kuma, if you counted the cranium. Then Bonnie popped out of the barrel and went, "Dang, you really got a massive head." Vegapunk examined her, praising Kuma for how well he'd slowed the sapphire scale disease. Then he gave them the news. There might actually be a way to cure her. Kuma nearly fainted. They celebrated like lottery winners. Vegapunk said he'd use experimental tech, advanced stem cell regeneration that even top doctors didn't understand. But it would take a fortune and years of research, like building a cyborg from scratch. During testing, the doc discovered something even more shocking. Kuma was a buccaneer, a bloodline the government had labeled dangerous. Kuma, unbothered, said he trusted Dragon. He asked what was special about his blood. Vegapunk didn't know yet. He didn't have enough data, but he had an offer. If Kuma agreed to donate his blood and give permission to clone him, Vegapunk would cover all the cost for Bonnie's treatment. Kuma didn't hesitate. "Of course I'll do it," he said, "but what will you do with the clones?" Vegapunk explained they'd be laser-equipped Navy soldiers with enough firepower to turn pirates to ash. Kuma replied, "If one of them saves even a single life, then my life was worth it." Vegapunk chuckled. Dragon's going to flip when he hears about this, but Kuma said if it saves Bonnie, I'd make a deal with the devil. This from a former pastor. Vegapunk called him a saint. Kuma corrected him. He was just a pacifist who wanted peace. Inspired, the doctor decided to name the future clone soldiers after that word, pacifistas. But watching from the shadows, Saint Saturn had other plans. To him, clone soldiers weren't warriors, they were weapons. And he had a scheme so twisted, it might just shatter everything Kuma had fought for. We have come to the end of this one. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to support us. We will be seeing you in the next one. Peace out.